Welcome all to Funshala. So in today's video, we are diving deep into Toposheets, an important part of your Class 10 ICC Geography syllabus. Well, this is part 1 of our detailed series where we'll break down the basic symbol, scale, interpretation, and everything you need to master this topic. So stay tuned, take notes, and let's make learning Toposheets easy and fun. And after a few days, we are coming with the part 2. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exam focused content. Let's get started. So, at first, we need to understand what is Toposheet exactly. We are breaking the word Toposheet into two parts. First, topo, which means topography, relief, and landforms on the land surface, including cultural and anthropogenic features. And when we project it on a map, it refers to Toposheet. So what are the uses of Toposheet in present day world? First, urban and rural planning. Second, disaster management. Third, environmental conservation. Fourth, tourism planning. And fifth, agriculture and irrigation. Now there are certain important components on the outline of the map which we should know before starting with the Toposheet. First is the main publisher of the Toposheet map, which is the Survey of India. Second, it is the sheet number. Third, it is the map scale. Fourth, it is the state and district reference. Fifth are the conventional symbols that represents the actual objects shown on the map. And sixth is the representative fraction. Now the first major component of the topo sheet is the scale, which is defined as ratio of distance measured on the map to the distance measured on the ground. And the formula of the scale is distance between 2 points on the map by distance between the same 2 points on the ground. And according to the topo sheet maps given by ICC Council, it is 2 centimeter by 1 kilometer. So when we measure the distance between 2 points on the map is 2 centimeter, actually the distance between those 2 points on the ground is 1 kilometer. A little bit confusing, right? Let us take a help of an example. When we define scale on a topo sheet, we are referring to the ratio between the distance on the map and the actual ground distance. This helps us to understand how real world distance are represented on a smaller surface. For example, let us say we draw a straight line on a map of India connecting the northernmost point with the southernmost point and marking it as A and B. Now, as we measure it on a piece of paper or on a map, we get it 16 centimeter approximately. But the actual ground distance is 3200 kilometer. And when we represent these both on a ratio, then we get the scale of the map. Now there are various type of scales used on a toposheet map. First is a statement scale or the verbal scale. On toposheet, the scale that can be verbally read out, which states that 2 centimeter on the map represents 1 kilometer on the ground. Next we have representative fraction, which plays a very important and crucial role on the toposheet, also known as ratio scale, where the scale of the map is represented in ratio, also referred to as universal scale as it has no unit. On toposheet map, it is shown as 1 is to 50,000, which means 1 centimeter on ground, sorry, 1 centimeter on map represents 50,000 centimeter on ground. The last one is the linear scale. Also known as graphic scale, it is represented by means of linear drawing, that is 500 meter to 1 centimeter, which means 1 centimeter on map represents 500 meter on ground. Now, if you observe closely and analyze it in a very detailed manner, then you would get to see all these three scale, statement scale, representative fraction, and linear scale represents the same unit, that is 2 centimeter to 1 kilometer. It's just that it is written in a different manner. Next, on the components of topo sheet, we have the grid lines. Now grid lines are just lines which are drawn across the whole topo sheet in red colors. There are certain grid lines which are vertically arranged like these, where the values increase in the east directions. And on the other hand, we have certain grid lines which are horizontally arranged, whose values increase in north direction. The vertical grid lines are called the eastings, whereas the horizontal grid lines are called the northings. Now, if we place the eastings and northings together, we get something like this, called the grid network. Now, what is the importance of grid network in Toposheet? It helps us to find specific location of a particular object on the Toposheet map with the help of grid reference. Let us take help of an example. Suppose we have arrangement of grid lines in such a manner and we get two objects. One is this hut and the other one is the windmill. Now, if we need to find the four-figure grid reference of the hut, what it would be? It would be 6313. Yes, in case of finding the four-figure grid reference, we first write the correct eastings and then we write the correct northings. In case of this hut, see the hut has just crossed the eastings of 63 but hasn't crossed the eastings of 64. So we'll consider 63 to be the proper eastings, and in terms of northings, it has just crossed the line of 13 but hasn't crossed the line of 14. So 13 would be considered the correct northing for this hut. And what would be the four-figure grid reference of the windmill? Yes, you guessed it correct, 6515. Next, on the components of topo sheet, we have the settlement. Now, to understand settlement, we need to first understand its fundamental component, which is the hut. Now, there are two types of hut basically. First are the permanent hut, which is completely red in color, and the second one is a temporary hut, which has a white interior and red colored border. Now, there are three basic type of settlement pattern found on the topo sheet map. First is the nucleated settlement. Now, nucleated settlement are formed due to the presence of flat terrain, civic amenities such as post office, police station, hospitals. Let me give you all a real life example. We will purchase our own place of residence, ensuring access to essential civic amenities like water, electricity, sanitation, along with additional facilities for a comfortable lifestyle. This will provide us stability, security, and a better quality of life. Obviously, the people of this regions shown in the topo sheet will search for the same things, and those regions which provide them with such facilities develop the nucleated settlement. Secondly, we have the dispersed settlement, which is exactly opposite to the factors that helps to grow the nucleated settlement. These are formed due to lack of civic amenities, rugged terrain, non-presence of water bodies. Third, we have the linear settlement that is formed along roads or rivers to draw facilities from it such as trade and transportation. Next, on the components of Toposheet, we have the roads. The first type of roads we get is metal roads. Roads covered with tar or concrete signifies better economic conditions. Second, we have the cart track, used for animal-drawn carts, used for transfer of goods and people across villages. Third, we have national highway. Fourth, we have the pack track. It is a path made when man and animals use the region to travel. On the map, it is shown by a single red broken line. Now, in certain cases, we may see that over the cart track, it is written motorable in dry season. Now, these has a very deep significance which shows that this region receives seasonal rainfall and this particular cart track can be used only during the dry season and not during the rainy season. Next, on the component of topo sheets, we have the drainage system. Now, the main element of the drainage system is the network formed by the rivers. These are seasonal rivers which have silt deposition and single perennial stream of water. Now, when we analyze the drainage system shown on the topo sheet, we'll get to see that most of the rivers are braided nature. They have riverine islands formed due to the deposition of sediments along its lower course, and from the rivers we get numerous seasonal streams. The streams dry up during the summer season. It occurs in arid regions with seasonal rainfall. Again, we get to see confluence. It is the intersection of the tributary with the main river. Then we get to see meanders, are loops, bends found in the middle course of the river. It is formed due to reduced gravity and velocity of the river water. This feature is indicative of flat ground. Then we have one of the most important component of the Toposheet map, which is the drainage pattern. The first drainage pattern which we get to see is a dendritic drainage pattern. The drainage pattern resembles a tree and its branches. Such a pattern develops when the surface material is relatively uniform and the relief is almost flat. The second drainage pattern which we get to see on the Toposheet map is the trellis drainage pattern. These type of rectangular drainage pattern develops where there are bands of alternately resistant and less resistant rocks. Now here, the rivers or the stream system forms 90-degree with the main channel. Next, we get to see the radial drainage pattern. Streams flow out in all directions like the spokes of a wheel. Such a pattern develops in areas where conical hill exist, where we get to see that from a central point, the streams are getting distributed to different directions. The last one is the disappearing stream. In this pattern, the stream may not join a river but simply disappears into the sand. Next, on the component of Toposheet, we get to study heights. Now, in the beginning of studying the heights, I must mention that heights in the Toposheet are in meters and measured above the Indian mean sea level. The first height which we get to see is called the spot height. It is the height of a particular point which is represented by this circle spot on the ground in meters indicated on the map with a black dot in front of a number. Second, which we get to see is the triangulated height. When the height of a place is determined by using trigonometry, the height is shown on maps with a dot enclosed within a triangle. They are then known as triangulation points or triangulation stations. And also I should mention that triangulated height is the height which is the most accurately measured on the topo sheet. Third, we have the benchmarks, are marks cut in a stone or shown on a building as a permanent reference for survey purposes. They indicate the height accurately determined by surveyors. Next, which we get to see is the relative height. This height is not taken from the sea level but with respect to the surrounding area. It may be height of a dam, bridge, sand dune. The next one is the relative depth. This depth of a tank, canal, well, etc. measured how deep it is relative to the surrounding area. Next, on the components of topo sheet, we get to study about the boundaries. Now, on the topo sheet map, the most common boundary which we get to see is the tehsil or the taluka boundary. This line, represented on the map by a series of dots, forms the border between the tehsil taluka within a district. Next, on the component of topo sheet, we get to study the occupational indicators. Now, how do we get to know that which particular occupation is a major practice over a particular region? That we get to know by looking at the dominant color wash of that particular region. Suppose number one, if there is yellow wash over a particular region, that means it represents cultivable land and the major occupation is agriculture. Secondly, if there is dominant green wash, it represents forest cover or wooded land, and the major occupation would be lumbering. Third, if there is dominantly whitewash, it represents barren and fallow land, and hence there is no major occupation practiced in this particular region. Also, apart from the colors, there are other occupational indicators that is shown on the topo sheet map. Number one, we get to see Lime kiln is a furnace that burns limestone to produce quicklime, a form of lime. Next, we have limestone quarry, which is a place where limestone is extracted from the earth to be used in construction and to make cement. Third, we get to see brick kiln is a furnace or a kiln where bricks are baked and burned. Next, on the components of topo sheet, we get to study artificial sources of irrigation. The first one being canal. Now, canal irrigation is a major practice in northern India, which we get to study in the chapter of water resources as well. So, it is a channel cut through land. Water is diverted from rivers into canals for the purpose of irrigation and navigation. Second, we have the tank, perennial, also known as talao. Tanks are means of storing water in hollow where it naturally occurs. Tanks are usually made by building embankments across streams or hollows. A perennial tank is one which has water throughout the year. Now, there is a particular note added to it. A tank with embankment is man made, while one without embankment is natural. The third one, which we have, is the dry tank, rock filled and with earthwork embankment. On the artificial sources of irrigation, the next one which we have is line perennial well, which is represented by a blue circle. We know that very clearly that well is the most important traditional form of irrigation practiced over northern India. The next one which we have is perennial well with brackish water. The term brackish represents salty water which is unfit for drinking purposes. The third one which we have is unlined well, which is represented by a blue lined circle. The other artificial sources of irrigation which we see very commonly on the Toposheet map is the covered tank, and the next one which we have is the overhead tank. The next artificial sources of irrigation which we have on Toposheet is the diggy. It is a tank which is used for the collection of water. Then we have sluice, a sliding gate to control flow of water. Then we have aqueduct. It is an artificial channel or a pipeline built of masonry used for carrying the water. Now we come across a very important component of Toposheet, which are the civic amenities. The civic amenities that helps to build up the nuclear settlement, which plays a very important role in all over the Toposheet. First one which we have is the post office. Secondly, which we have is the police station. Third, we have is the bridge. Fourth, we have is a causeway. A causeway is a raised metal road over a minor stream, which is also an indicator of the seasonal rainfall. Fifth, we have is the hospital and the veterinary hospital. Sixth, we have is the dispensary. Seventh, we have is the CPW and the PWD. CPWD stand for Central Public Works Department and PWD stand for Public Works Department. Then under the civic amenities, we have the main power line, which is meant for electricity supply. Then we have the fire line, which prevents the spread of the forest fire. And third, we have the cemetery or the graveyard. Next, on the components of topo sheet, we need to study certain geographic features. The first one we have are the contour lines. Contour lines are imaginary lines on a topographic map that connects points of equal elevation. They help to represent the three-dimensional shape of the terrain on a two-dimensional surface. Contour lines are essential for understanding the landforms, slopes, valleys, ridges, elevation changes on the map. On a topo sheet, they aid in navigation, planning, and geographic analysis, making them crucial for hikers, engineers, geologists, and planners. On topo sheet map, the contour lines are represented by brown curved lines. Now on the topo sheet map provided by the ICC Council, the contour interval is always 20 meters, which means the difference between two consecutive contour lines is 20 meters. I have given certain examples of how the contour lines helps to represent certain real life landform features present on the Earth's surface. Next, on the geographic features, we have depression, which is found mainly in arid regions due to the erosive work of the winds. Then we have stony waste or the gravel waste, which is land covered with gravel and stones. And third, we have sheet rock, which is continuous stretch of horizontally embedded hard rocks, which are exposed to the surface and are well polished due to the agents of erosion. Next, on the geographic features, we have sand dunes, which represents the depositional feature of the wind in the arid regions. Secondly, we have the falls, which represents the waterfall. And third, we have the broken ground, which are formed due to the alternate wet and dry periods, which is also an indicator of seasonal rainfall and are mainly found along the riverbanks. And lastly, on the geographic features, we have the open scrub, which is an indicator of scanty rainfall and desertic conditions. Then we have the rock outcrop, which also represent desert type vegetation where the rocks are cropped out and pieces of rock jutes out of the main rock. Third, we have the dense mixed jungle, which is an indicator of heavy rainfall, and open jungle, which is an indicator of moderate rainfall. So that's a wrap for part 1 of Toposheet series, where I showed all the important conventional symbols and its importance over the projected region on the Toposheet map. In the next part, that is part 2 of Toposheet series, we shall start solving questions from the Toposheet strictly for your ICSE 2025 boards examination. Till then, subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends, and always remember, it's fun, Shala, from us to you.